Hi everyone, how you guys doing? Hope everyone is doing well. It's been a while, I know. Um, Honestly, I've just been busy. And I've been playing a lot of Halo at the same time. I've been really enjoying Halo Infinite, and yeah, I was like, oh, I have two options. So usually, my schedule is, um, I work 8 hours, then I have a class at night for 3 hours. Uh, So that's 11, 12 hours workday. And then usually at night, I'm like, okay, what should I do? I can either stream or I can play Halo. And so for the past 2 days, I've just been playing Halo. Been really burnt out on work and the amount of work that I have. Anyways, I digress. Doesn't matter. That's not why you're here. I got a question. Um, last in the last video, last stream. Um, So the question was, do you think there's a chance for instance, for the gaming industry or abusive practices continue? Uh, Sorry, 1 second. One moment. Right? So, are we still gonna have companies that abuse their staff and because we all heard about what's happening with Blizzard Activision. We all heard about what's happening with the crunch culture at Ubisoft and the scandal at Ubisoft with female employees not being treated right and even male employees being harassed and so on and so forth. And I really want to direct you towards a video that kind of explains this situation, whether you're a male or a female. Um, Both genders can kind of find themselves in that situation. And there's a video that explains that really, really nicely and kind of puts it in perspective, especially for males who are like, okay, well, imagine yourself, you got your job at Blizzard and you're really happy. And if that's the dream job, right? That's kind of your end goal. It is the thing you've been working your pretty much entire uh, young adulthood to accomplish, and you finally did it. And this guy you look up to, your kind of your lead, your hero, the guy you follow on Twitter, the one you look up to. For example, for myself, there are two people, or a bunch of people I look up to. I look up to John Carmack, and if you haven't read Masters of Doom, the book, highly recommend reading it. And even if you don't like reading, you can get it on Audible and hear it. Um, so for those who don't know, I mean, I assume you don't know. Why would you know? I live in the UAE, right? I live in Dubai, but I grew up in a place called Oman, and so most of my friends are kind of my best friends are there. And so what I do is every New Year, I try to go there. Since COVID happened, this hasn't been happening or didn't happen for the past 2 years, right? So, but I try to go there and I drive there, and I love driving and I love my car, and it's a nice road trip. It's like a 5 hour drive. I go there for a week, we hang out, we have a LAN party, we kind of enjoy ourselves and so on and so forth. And I listen to that book every single time I go there. I listen to it on the way there and on the way back. And I've listened to it like a bunch of times. Highly recommend you listen to it or read it. And one of my absolute heroes is John Carmack. He's he is basically everything I aspire to be. Um, he's just fantastic, right? Obviously, I don't know, and here's the thing, um, whenever you look up to someone, you don't know them personally, so you know, uh, but I look up to the guy, and he's awesome from what I know about him, and I try to aspire to be like him. Um, so John Carmack and John Romero, and there's a bunch of others, but the point is, right? Imagine you're a 20-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old, just graduated from college, found yourself working at Blizzard, and whether you're male or female, you start your lead, the guy you look up to, starts kind of harassing you. Uh, Not immediately, but sexually harassing you, and kind of he starts slow, maybe touching your face or whatever, and things start to get uncomfortable. And as a 22, 23-year-old, like I remember myself in that situation, like it's especially if you haven't built your personality to tell people to fuck off, back off, and tell people to stop or no, right? It's easy to be taken advantage of. And so imagine yourself in that situation, and then now you're kind of living in hell, where you're working for the company that you love the most, but you found out that the person you look up to is an absolute asshole and total piece of shit. Um, and so you're kind of stuck and you don't know what to do, and you're like, okay, maybe I should go talk to HR. You go talk to HR, and then nothing happens, or HR kind of sides with your lead, and now your lead kind of now is treating you even worse, right? Before he was sexually harassing you, and now he's just completely aggressive to you, and now you're in a situation where you're like, what the fuck do I do? Like, do I quit? I like my job. Well, I think I like my job. I used to like my job. It's what I want to do. It's what I want. It's my end goal, right? This is what I've been working my entire life towards ever since I was 8 years old. Love computers, love games. I've been reading this guy tweets. I have been following him on social media. I know his favorite food, whatever, right? He's like your kind of, it's the guy you look up to. You go to college, you study computer science or game development or game design or art or audio or whatever. And then when you finally go and work for him, turns out to be a piece of shit, and you're like, your entire life is, everything you worked up to, it's just hell, pure hell now, right? And so what do? You right? That's kind of what a lot of people find themselves um facing in the game industry, and obviously in Hollywood too. And you probably heard the whole Weinstein kind of thing that happened. Um, but like this happens in every industry, not just the game industry. At least, well, mainly as far as I know, the industries that the creative industries that people want to do, like acting or game development or like the popular music, right? Things like that. And it sucks. It's disappointing. Will companies stop doing that? I don't know. I mean, lawsuits changes companies. Consumers, they can change companies with their money. You can just be like, hey, I'm not gonna buy this product anymore because they treat their employees like shit. Even though there was a bunch of tweets where the employees at Blizzard, they were like, hey, listen, I'm I'm not gonna, please buy our game, like please buy Diablo or Overwatch when it comes out or whatever, because we worked on this product so hard. We love this product. We poured our passion, our blood and sweat into it, and we want you to buy it, right? We like our jobs. It's just that the people, our heads, right? The lead, the CTO, the CEO, whoever, executives, they're pieces of shit, right? But we want you to buy our products. At least that's some of the tweets that I read, right? So I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of good companies out there, right? There are a lot of good AAA studios. There are a lot of indie companies that this doesn't happen. It's really all about the culture of the company, and it sucks that this happens. It it From what I understand, or from what I can imagine, this really happens like as early as like middle school or high school, right? You build your character at that point, and if you start sexually harassing people at that point, or started to, you know, or you were an asshole and no one told you don't do that, or you didn't get trouble, or no one taught you not to be a dick, you're gonna grow up and work in a place and gonna be a dick. And if no one tells you not to be a dick there, you're just gonna keep doing it. So it's really, it starts at home, right? It starts where, honestly, I kind of, partly I blame the parents for not for like not teaching their kids to not be pieces of shits, right? um maybe the parents did all they could and the kid was still a piece of shit. Anyways, and they grew up and sexual harass people in the workplace, which is not great. um so the answer to, hey, are companies going to be better, game development companies, or we're still going to have this whole sexual harassment thing? Well, I don't know, depends on the companies, really, if the companies are going to change or not. um just all you can do is strive to work in a place where, or you try to do as much research as possible on a company before you join. And just know that just because you're working at EA, just because you're working at Blizzard, just because that's not your end, like that's not the end goal. That's just a point on your journey. That's just a path. You're gonna end up working for thousands and not thousands. You're gonna be working for hundreds and tens of hundreds of companies in your career. Um, I mean, assuming if you switch a company every year or every 2 years, or maybe if you find a company that you like, you stick with it for a while. But the point is just joining EA, joining Blizzard, Activision, joining Ubisoft. That's just, you know, part of the journey. At the end of the day, you might like it, which is great. It might be good for you, or you might decide to leave and work for a different company, or you might switch industries altogether, or you might go indie, right? And I'm trying to find that video that basically everything I've talked about right now was mentioned by this guy on YouTube. He's awesome. I started following him after watching that video. He does art. He's an artist, and he paints a picture. Personally, I've never worked in a AAA studio, right? I've gone indie since I graduated because I don't see myself working in a AAA studio. I want to do it maybe for a year at least at some point in my life, but I don't see that's something I enjoy doing or want to do. Um, and so, but there's this guy who made this video that kind of describes everything I've talked about, and he paints a very good picture of what's happening or what happened. I'll try find it and post it in the description. I can't find it now. I'll try find it. But yeah, it sucks that's what's happening in the game industry right now. You know, um, it's I don't know. I don't know how you can avoid it other than doing research and making sure that you join a company it's respectful. And I mean, if you join a company and turns out they're assholes and you go to HR and you complain and nothing happens and they fire you, then it sucks. You've lost on money. Your stability is compromised. You might not be able to pay rent, right? All that sucks. Um, you can sue them. That's gonna it's gonna take cost a lot of money. You just, I guess, find another job. I mean, I don't know what you would do in that situation. I'll like because I've never been into that situation, right? Like, what do I do if I got sexually harassed and I went to HR and I spoke up and I got fired because I spoke up? What do I do? Probably post on it and post on Twitter on what happened, then move on with my life. I don't know. It's really hard. It's a hard question to answer because I've never been in that situation and I don't know what I would do in that situation. So I don't know. Will the games get better? I mean, hopefully. I don't know. Um, I don't know if it's gonna get better, but be sure not to join companies that are like that. You already know there are companies like that. You already know this is happening at Blizzard Activision. You already know that some of it, some of it happened at Ubisoft. There was a case or two that happened at Ubisoft like that. Ubisoft. Um, but there are a lot of good indie studios and a lot of AAA studios where you don't face that. You don't have that crunch culture. You don't treat it. You don't get treated like a piece of shit just because you like programming or you like games. They treat you like an actual human being. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. Life is hard. Life is tough. Yeah. I'll remember to link that to that video that I talked about. But yeah. Anyways, moving on. Um, check out Masters of Doom. Definitely check out Masters of Doom. Such a good book. Such an incredible book. Um, man, I love John Carmack. He's such a cool guy. Um, anyways, moving on with our lives. Let's go back to programming, shall we? So last time we were doing the what the fuck were we doing? Yeah. All right. So last time we displayed FPS. We displayed FPS on the screen. We rendered some stuff on the screen, right? The only thing we need to do now is reduce the enemy health when bullets hit, destroy bullets, destroy the bullet when bullet hits the enemy, and destroy the bullet when the bullet goes off the screen. So let's start with doing hit detection. So we already have collision detection happening. I want to explain a few things before I kind of implement it, and just show you the different ways of doing this. Let me find my tablet. Where's my tablet? Here it is. Um, there are different ways to do collision detection and to do all this jazz, right? Where were we? Right here? No. Right here? No. That's just a line. No. Where were we? Is this our place? Oh, it is our place. I just started working here on the right for a different class. Yeah, we were here. So let me just do a line like that. Separate everything. Yeah. So let's kind of pick this spot here. Alright, anyways. So let me talk about collision detection for a bit. There are two types of collision detection. There are two types, or there are two ways you can check if a bullet hits an enemy. There's projectile hit detection, right? That's like if you've ever seen Symmetra. Is it Symmetra? Is her name Symmetra? In Overwatch? What's her name? What's the lady that has a rocket? Who's the lady who has the rocket? Can we... This Farah. So, you see that Farah has rockets, right? And so those are projectiles. Those are actual sprites, well, 3D model. It's a 3D model, right? It's a 3D game. They're, well, I think so. Let's assume it is a 3D model. I actually don't know if it's a 3D model or not, but all we know it's a projectile, right? It's a projectile that's moving in the air, right, at slow speed, and when it hits someone at the moment of impact, it reduces your health, right? So you can do collision, or you can do bullets, or you can damage enemies using projectiles, right? And so the thing about projectiles is that, well, there's a problem with them. Let's say this is my character over here, right? And he's shooting a bullet, right? This is the bullet, 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 right? Bullet. Okay. And there's a wall over here. There's a big wall. I'll just say one. So when I first fire the bullet, it's over here. When I fire the second bullet, it's over here. When I fire the third bullet, it's over here. When I fire the fourth bullet, it's over here. And you can see this collision detection over here on this point. So the bullet has collided with the wall, and now there's collision. Right, so this works. This is fine. There's no problem with that. The problem is if you move the bullet way too fast. So let's say on the first frame, the bullet is here. On the second frame, the bullet is here. And on the third frame, the bullet is here. So now the bullet is moving. Between frames, the bullet has moved in a larger distance than the wall. And so the problem with that is now we don't detect a collision detection. On this frame, there's no collision. On this frame, there's no collision. And on this frame, there's no collision. Where before, when we were moving the bullets in a slower speed, right? On this frame, there's no collision. On this frame, there's no collision. No collision, no collision, and we hit a collision here. So on this frame, we detected collision, right? So this works fine. That's if the bullet speed is slow. However, if the bullet speed is fast, then a bullet could literally pass through walls and collision would not be detected, which is a problem, right? So now the question is, how can we solve this problem? How can we have it so a bullet can move fast and at the same time it will detect collision? Well, there's an algorithm for that. There's something called like sweeping AABB or something. There's an article on gamedev.net, which I don't remember. we ping ABB in depth? Swept? Yeah, this. There's this algorithm called swept ABB, right? I think this helps. I've never implemented it, right? But this kind of works. But most games and most game engines, they rely on two different ways of detecting collision. This type of collision, where you have a projectile, it's called a projectile-based collision or projectile-based shooting. When you shoot a gun, you're actually shooting a projectile, right? And so when the projectile hits someone, it reduces the health of that person. So there's this type, right? But this works great for slow projectiles that are not moving way too fast. That works great. However, the second the projectile is moving fast, or if the wall is thin. So if my wall is thin enough like that, and the bullet is not that fast, let's say it's this only big, right? You can see that it missed, it's not moving that fast, so this is not that great, but it missed the wall because the wall is too thin, right? So the two ways you can solve this problem is either make the wall thicker, either make the collider thicker, so when it collides, it actually collides, or slow down the bullet. Those are your options. Those are basically your two options. Make the collider or the wall thicker, or make the bullet slower. So that's for projectile based shooting. Now most games, they have a mix of both, right? They have a mix of two. For example, the other type of gunplay that you have is something called hit scan. So hit scan based collision detection, or hit scan based shooting, where essentially what happens is that this is a wall, right? And instead of moving a projectile, right? Instead of moving a projectile in the world, what you are doing, you're casting a ray. Now, for those who've never heard of this concept before or don't know what a ray is a line that starts from a certain location and moves in a certain direction. Infinitely moves in that direction. So a ray has a starting point and a direction, and it moves infinitely in that direction. Now, what's the difference between, so that's array, right? That's array. Now, there's also something called a line. A line, essentially, is well, it's a line. It moves in both directions infinitely. So it doesn't have a starting point, right? Well, I guess the center is the starting point, but it moves on the right and the left infinitely. Where array has a starting position and it moves infinitely in that direction. A line so that's a line. A line segment is our normal line, has a starting point, has an end point, and that's a line, right? We call it a line segment. We usually refer to this as a line segment. This is a line, it moves in two directions infinitely. Array has a starting point and it moves in a direction, right? So whenever we're doing hit scan, whenever we're shooting something, we essentially cast, and we say we cast array, or we shoot array, or we make array that starts from a certain location and moves in a certain direction. And we're doing that all in one frame. So we cast array, we shoot a line from our location, right? I'm going to call it array, but think of it as a line. It's not a line because it's array. I'm going to call it array, right? It has a starting position and it moves in a certain direction. So I'm going to cast array, I'm going to shoot array from a certain point. Usually it's the camera, right? So let's say the camera is over here. And in games we have the concept of a camera, right? We didn't implement it in SFML right now, but there's a concept of a camera, and a camera essentially is a thing that draws our game, or it renders our scene and levels and enemies. So it's responsible for rendering things on the screen. If we don't have a camera, we don't have anything drawn on the screen. So usually what we do, we cast the ray from the camera location into the forward direction, right? And we say that if it hits something, right, we're checking along the ray that if it hits something. If it hits something, then we know we collided with something and we can reduce its health, right? But this all happens in one frame. There is no movement. I'm not moving every single frame step by step. I'm just casting a ray from a certain location, which is usually the camera, to a direction, and if it hits something along the way, like an enemy, we know that collision happened, and we can reduce the enemy health. Now, we will do hit scan at some point, right? Because there's a bunch of complicated math that has to deal with that. Because what we need to do first is we need to define what array is. We need to define its position. We need to define its direction. And we need to detect collision. We need to detect an intersection point between an array and a line. So imagine this is the enemy, and we need to figure out where the ray and the line intersected, which is this point, right? We know, because we're looking at it, we know that this is the intersection point between this enemy, the white line is the enemy, between the enemy and the ray. And that point has to be calculated, and we need to detect if that even happened, right? And so this is usually called hit scan. So even if you hit a single pixel, like one pixel from the box, or if you hit a single pixel, if that ray hits just that pixel, it will consider that you collided with the guy, and so you kill him, right? And that's how guns usually work. You have hit scan, and so when we shoot a person, we cast a ray from the camera to that location or certain location, the forward direction usually, where our gun is pointing, and then we shoot and we kill the guy, right? And that's why in video games, whenever let's say Call of or Rainbow Six Siege, Rainbow Six Erection, what the fuck? Am I crazy? Did I read that right? No, Extraction. It's funny. Anyways, so can we fucking move on with the ads? Can we please move on? Oh no, second ad. All right, gotta watch the second ad. Santa's here. It's really important we watch the second ad. All right, so whenever you're playing a game, can you show me your gun? Right, see the gun. Usually, your ray is not being shot from the gun barrel, right? So this is what you're looking down the scope, right? So this is your gun. How do I draw a gun? Let's assume this is my gun, right? This is a gun. And so your ray is not being shot from the points. That's fantastic. The ray is not being shot from the gun barrel, right? The ray it's not like that, right? The ray is actually casted from the camera. So this is your camera, and the guy is holding a gun. Say this is a gun. I can't draw a gun, guys. Excuse me, please. Right? He's holding a gun, and he's pointing that gun in a certain direction, right, to the enemy. We don't cast the ray from the gun. We cast the ray from the camera, right? And that's why sometimes in some games, well, usually different games handle this differently, but usually, if and you can see, I wish I could show you an example. Assume this guy, right? Assume that his gun went through the wall, right? And so imagine, let's see, Rainbow Six Siege, gun in wall. Can we Can we have an example of that? Can I have maybe an image? Okay, this is good enough. Imagine this gun is clipping through the wall, meaning that if you get close enough to the wall, the gun is actually inside the wall, right? Or even forget that. If the gun is not clipping the wall, if your camera is clipping the wall, you can shoot the guy and kill him, right? Because the ray is not being casted, like the gun can point downwards, and the ray is not being casted from the barrel, it's being casted from the actual camera, right? And as far as and some games, again, some games handle this differently, but usually the ray is being casted from the camera, and so if you shoot someone, you're shooting them from the camera itself, not from the gun barrel, right? Because the gun barrel is not always pointing straight at the guy, right? It's like, right, this is the scope over here, and the gun barrel is over here, so the ray would have to point forward, but the scope is pointing to their head, right? So usually the ray is being pointed from the camera itself. So that's how we usually handle hit scan, and that's how usually games handle bullets. Now the problem with this is that if you're playing a realistic game like Battlefield or whatever game, you have bullet physics. Your bullets, you have bullet drop, right? You shoot a bullet here, and the bullet is dropping in through the wall. If you're sniping someone from really far distance, your bullet is doing an arc. It's falling as it moves in the world, right? And that doesn't happen with array. Array is just a straight line. It's an infinitely long straight line. And the second you tap it, the second you click your mouse, you kill that guy. There's no travel time. The bullet is not actually traveling. You just kill him immediately, right? And so what Battlefield in these games, they add bullet physics on top of casting the ray. So they emulate the fact that, hey, there's a delay until you actually kill the guy. The bullet is actually falling, and so on and so forth, right? But essentially, it's just a ray. You shoot the ray, you hit him. And so for us, what we are gonna do, we're not gonna do hit scan right now. We will do hit scan later. Hit scan is a little bit more complicated because, like I said, we need to create the concept of array. We need to calculate the collision detection or the hit point between a ray and a line, or a ray and a box, and we need to find the intersection point. We need to find whether we collided or not. There's a bunch of complicated math that we need to do. We will do that definitely, but not now, right? For now, what we're gonna do, we're just gonna use the bullet, the projectile kind of way of doing it, right? I just have a bullet. I'm gonna make my bullet travel every single frame. If it hits the enemy, then there's collision. If there's a collision, we reduce the enemy health or we kill the enemy, right? However, we just need to make sure that the bullet is not moving too fast and that our collider is not too thin, because if our collider is too thin, the bullet can pass right through even if the bullet is not moving too fast, right? So we just need to make sure of those two, right? Other than that, everything should work just fine. So those are the two types of shooting: projectile based and hit scan. We're gonna implement hit scan later on. We're gonna do projectile hit detection right now. All right. Cool. So with that all in mind, let's actually do it. Hey Mind, welcome to the stream. Hey, I'm glad you're here too. Sorry, I've been kind of busy for the past 3 days, so that's why I didn't stream much. But here I am today. Let's finish this up. All right, so we explained the concept of bullets, right? Right now we have a problem where we're shooting, like, as long as I'm holding my mouse button, I'm shooting bullets over and over and over. what I want to do, I want to add the fire rate, right? Meaning the bullet should fire every certain time, every like not all the time, but you know, like a fire rate. We need to add a fire rate. And then we also need to make sure that the bullet is destroyed and it hits the enemy, we reduce its health, right? All right, let's start with the bullet fire rate because that's easy. That's not too difficult. We really should move this code to a bullet class. Like we really, really should move this code to a bullet class. But I'm gonna keep it now here for now. We'll clean it up later. So this is the player class, right? Ooh, before I start, I forgot. I keep forgetting to commit my code and push it to GitHub every single time. So let's do that right now before I start messing anything or doing anything with the code. Can you like Microsoft? Can you Windows? Can you not? Hey, nothing is more important than the stream. But yeah. All right, so what did we do? Added Arial font to our assets. Now we need to make sure the font is committed by LSF. We never want to commit this to the source to Git itself. We want LFS to handle that. Added frame rate to our game. Frame rate is now rendered in game. Do anything else? That's it. Added constructors and destructors for the player and skeleton classes. All right. Let me see if I spelled this correctly. Google, help. Oh, I did spell it correctly. Look at me. All right. Added frame rate. Commit. Push to our dev branch. All right. Come on, let's go. Push. Let's push. Let's go. All right, pushed. Everything is pushed. Done. All right, now I can get back to working on my code. All right, so the first thing I want to do is add a frame rate, not frame rate, fire rate. All right, I don't want to keep shooting the bullets continuously. I want to shoot the bullets every certain amount of time. So the first thing I need to do is I need to create two variables. The first one, float, fire rate, right? Or I'm gonna make a max. You know what? I'm gonna do it the stupid way. I'm gonna just do fire rate, right? And then I'm going to do a float fire rate timer. Okay, so first a fire rate and a fire rate timer. Or get call it max fire rate. Yeah, so max fire rate and fire rate timer. Copy both these variables. Make sure in the constructor we add them here. So max fire rate is going to be initialized to, I don't know, let's say 0.25 F. And fire rate timer is initialized to 0. Right, like these. All right, so I have two of these lovely variables inside the update, right? And I'll kind of want to section off the code here a little bit. Just put this here, right? Just to be like, hey, this is the bullet code. Really should clean up this class and move this code somewhere else, but it's fine. So what I need to do, the first thing I need to do is get my fire rate timer. So here's the idea. The fire rate timer variable holds how much time has passed since I last shot my gun, right? So it's gonna do something like this, right? So fire rate timer plus equal to delta time, right? And so we talked about delta time before. We said that delta time is the amount of time that it takes to render a single frame. And so every frame, I'm gonna add how long it took to render the previous frame into the timer. And so fire rate timer is gonna continuously increase with time. So it's gonna go to, I don't know, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and so on and so forth, right? And so if I just print out this fire rate timer std and del, you'll see that it's just gonna keep incrementing. It's gonna keep moving higher and higher and higher, right? Just like a timer in our game. So you can see these are milliseconds. So every 1,000 is a 1 second. So this is 7,662. That means since the game started, we have moved 7 seconds in time, right? So now 21 seconds, 22 seconds, 25 seconds since I played the game, right? So it increases. It's basically a timer, right? It increments. It keeps incrementing, right? So that's my frame rate timer. It's supposed to symbolize how long it took before I last shot my gun. So here's what I want to do. I want to say, if I shoot my mouse button, right? And, right, so I want to have, this if statement will have two conditions. If I shot my bullet, or sorry, if I clicked my mouse button, so if I clicked my mouse button and my fire rate timer is bigger than or equal to max fire rate, right? So fire rate timer is going to increment from 0. It's going to go 0, 1 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And I'm checking here if this timer has passed the max fire rate. And I've set the max fire rate to, let's set it to 1 second. It has to be 1,000. We're dealing with milliseconds here, right? So let's say 1,000 milliseconds, which means 1 second. So if the timer has passed here, if I clicked my mouse button and if the timer has passed 1 second, then I should be allowed to shoot a bullet, right? Now, it's really important. After we shoot a bullet, I need to reset my timer back to 0. Because if I don't reset my timer back to 0, this is going to keep incrementing. Now I'm going to keep shooting bullets over and over. So we're just going to have the same exact old behavior of I'm shooting bullets endlessly. But I want to emulate a fire rate. I only shoot a bullet every 1 second. I only shoot a bullet every 0.5 seconds, something like that. So in my case, if I click my mouse button and the timer is bigger than the max frame rate, which is 1 second or 1,000 milliseconds, then I can shoot a bullet. So that means now, if I click and hold my mouse button, I will only shoot a bullet every second. 1 bullet, 2, 3, I'm holding my mouse, 4, 5, I stop holding my mouse. Now I'm going to hold my mouse again. 1, 2, 3. Now I have a fire rate, right? I'm not spamming bullets, right? I'm now shooting bullets every 1 second. If I want to increase the rate of how fast I'm shooting a bullet, I just need to change my max fire rate at the very top. Instead of a second, and again, remember, this is 1,000 milliseconds. So that's 1 second. If I want to say half a second, then 500 milliseconds. Let me close WhatsApp real quick. Let's do that. All right. So if I press play, and now I'm gonna shoot a bullet every half a second. So it's gonna be a much faster fire rate, and you can already see it's a much faster fire rate. Right? Let's do 250 milliseconds. So now it's a quarter of a second. Every time I shoot, it's a quarter of a second. So I'm gonna shoot. It's much, much faster, and so on and so forth. So now I have a fire rate, which is awesome. Right? bullets, right? Maybe they're a little bit too slow. Maybe let's do every 150 milliseconds. So right? Not too bad. Every 150 milliseconds is not too bad. All right, so I got my fire rate. My fire rate is working. It's beautiful. It's great. Nice. Right? And I don't know if I talked about the AND statement. Essentially, the double AND just basically means in the if statement, this condition has to be true, and this condition has to be true in order for us to execute the if statement. If one of those conditions is false, then we never go inside the if statement, and this code is never executed. So that's what the AND means. The OR, this is an OR statement, the double lines. The double lines mean I could either click the mouse button, or my timer could be bigger than max fire rate. So if this is true, or if this is true, I can shoot a bullet. So only one of them has to be true to shoot a bullet. But with the AND statement, both of these conditions have to be true to go inside here. Right? So this is something just to think about or to know. Right? All right. So we got our fire rate. That's great. Let's do collision. Right? We need to do collision. So now I have my collision function here. I don't have a collider around my bullet. Right? So we need to have a collider around our player and the collider around the skeleton. Instead of the player, right, I need to give it a bullet, which is my bullets, which is a rectangle shape, right? And so instead of a sprite, I'll just say, ooh, okay, so this is interesting. Look what I'm doing here. Every frame, I'm checking collision between the player and the enemy. So there's one player and one enemy. What I need to do now is check for collision between every single bullet and the enemy, right? So how do I check every single bullet? Well, what I have to do is move this if statement into my for loop, because this for loop is where I'm looping through all my bullets. And I need to make sure I do this after I move the bullet. So here I'm moving the bullet at this line, and then I need to check for the collision between that bullet and that skeleton. So I'll go through this in a second, but I would like to change this code before. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say bullets. I can't just say bullets get global bounds, because bullets is a vector. Like this is my vector. I need to access the element inside my vector, which is a rectangle shape, right? So to access an element, I do I, right? I'm accessing every single element inside my bullet, and I'm getting the global bounds. Okay, so let me explain this code. Essentially, every frame. So we drew the first frame number 1. We let's say frame number 1 we shot like 10 bullets. Let's say there are 10 bullets in the first frame. So I loop through my bullets. I is 0. So I go and I pick the first bullet. I calculate its direction. I normalize the bullet direction. I move the bullet. And then I check the collision. I check for collision between bullet number 0 and the skeleton. If there's collision, I say collision. Okay, so that's the first bullet. Now I loop through again and I go to the next bullet. Now I is 1. So it was 0 before, now it goes to 1. I calculate direction, normalize, move the bullet. Now I'm checking for collision between the second bullet and my skeleton. When I'm done, I increment this and I check for the third bullet. I check collision between the third bullet and the skeleton. So every frame, I am going through all my bullets and I'm checking, hey, did you collide with the skeleton? Yes, no. Did you collide with the skeleton? Yes, no. Did I collide with the skeleton? Yes or no. I do it for every single bullet, and depending on that, I do whatever I need to do. Right? So now, in theory, right? In theory, if I shoot a single bullet, it should say I collided with the skeleton. So shoot. When it arrives, it says collision, right? And you can see the collision is still happening over and over and over because the bullet is still colliding with the enemy, right? All right. So we got collision detection working between the bullet and our guy. So what I can do now, all right, I need to delete that bullet, because when a bullet hits the enemy, I would like to delete that specific bullet. All right, the way I can do that is by basically saying, oh Lord, forgot what the syntax. The C++ syntax is garbage. The C# syntax is much nicer. Let me try. If I remember correctly, it's bullets.erase. No. Delete. No. Is it not erase? Oh, it is erase. Bullet erase. Bullets.beginning or begin plus I. So I'm deleting the bullet from the start to I. This might cause problems, and I'll talk about this, and I'll explain this line of code in a second. Just want to test it. So I'm going to shoot one bullet. That bullet should be deleted. Okay, I'm going to shoot a bunch of bullets. All these bullets should be deleted. Okay. It's weird that no issues are happening. Okay, cool. I guess no problems are happening. Okay. So this is fine, which is good news, right? And you can see that collision only happens. Ooh, no, look at this. Collision is happening a lot. Like a lot. What is going on here? Ooh, it says there's a bullet here. Why is there a bullet here? There shouldn't be any bullets in here. Oh, if I click my mouse, it okay. I see what's happening. Okay. Because if I click my mouse outside the screen, it's gonna do this thing. It's gonna shoot a bullet anyways, right? Let me just continue here. Right. Okay. Alright, I mean, this seems fine. I expected to be there a problem. I expected to be there to be a problem, and I would like to explain why I expected that, because in C# that problem exists. Okay. I'll explain it anyways for those who are gonna do C# later on, because I feel it's important. It's really important. But let me explain this line first of all. So when a single bullet collides with an enemy, essentially what I do, let me draw this for you. I say erase bullet begin plus I, right? And so it looks something like this. So let's say I have a list over here. So this is my player over here. It's all nice and good. I have a bullet over here, and I shoot another bullet, and I shoot another bullet to the enemy, which he has a square face apparently. He's a robot or whatever. Okay? Shooting a bunch of bullets. And so every time I add a bullet, this is what's happening in memory. This is my vector, right? This is my STD vector. Now, every time I add a bullet, right? Every time I shoot a bullet, I add it to the list of bullets. So the first time I shoot a bullet is here, right? And then I shoot another bullet. So I shoot a bullet, it moved a little bit, and so my bullet is now here. And then I shoot another bullet, and the bullet now is here. And so this is bullet number 1, this is bullet number 2, this is the bullet number 3. So this is the first bullet I shot, which has an index of 0. This is an index of 1, this is an index of 2. Alright, so bullets, I add a bullet here. Every time I shoot a bullet, I add it to the list. So this is bullet 0, bullet 1, and then bullet 2, right? I'm shooting these bullets. This bullet, the first bullet, collides with this guy, right? So now the bullet has moved over here, and it's over here. Now what happens, or what I expected to happen, this is what I expected to happen, is that the first bullet is going to be deleted. Essentially what I'm saying, bullets.erase. So it's going to remove, erase is going to remove from the first bullet plus an offset of I. So what bullets begin plus I means is that what's the beginning, what's the start of my bullets? Well, the start of my bullets is index 0, right? I is which bullet I want to destroy, and currently I is also 0. So I'm saying 0 plus 0 is 0. Okay, this might not have been clear a lot. So let's assume I am shooting bullet number 10. So this is the 10th bullet. So what this line says, I would like to erase the bullet at index beginning, which is index 0. So this bullet begin is index 0. Index 0. Plus, you have a plus here, right? Plus I. What's I? Well, I is index 9, because we know that the 10th bullet is index 9, because we start 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th bullet is at index 9. So I say 0. I would like to erase bullet 0 plus 9, which means that's the 9th index. So what happens is that we go to the 9th index, right? Let's assume this is the 9th index over here. Let's say there's bullet number 10. Bullet 10 here, bullet 9 over here, right? So we delete the 9th index, right, from the list. And now bullet 10 became 9. And bullet, if we had bullet 11 would have become 10. If we had bullet 12, it would have been 11, right? And the list will be reordered essentially, right? But this is essentially what we're saying: erase, start from the beginning of the list, and go to the index that I want to erase my bullet. And the beginning of my list is 0. The bullet that I want to erase is index 9, so I delete index 9, right? So that's essentially what that line does. Here's the problem. Okay, here's the issue. Essentially in C#, it's happened in C#. I don't know why it's not happening in C++. Maybe it does happen in C++, but I don't see any issue. But in C#, this is what happens. My list looks something like this. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If let me remember the example correctly. 1 second. So if I delete the second index, if I delete this, okay, I think I remember. If I delete the second index, okay, let me just give you the example in C#. And maybe the same thing happens in C++, I don't know, but I know for a fact this happens in C#. Okay, so let's say you're looping through a list. So you have a for loop, for I equal to 0. I is less than, how many elements do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? We have 5 elements. Or this list is called bullets. So we're doing bullets dot count. In C# it's called count. In C++ it's size. So I'm just gonna do size in C++ because we are doing C++. But I don't know if this happens in C++. I know it happens in C#. Just want to make that clear. So I++, right? So I have, this is my for loop, right? I is 0, I is less than the bullet size, which is 5, right? I++. Now, I is 0. Basically, in the for loop, I say if collision. So I'm checking if there's a collision. If there's a collision between index 0 of bullet 0 and the enemy, is there collision? No, there's no collision. Is there? I move on. I plus plus. So I is now 1. Is there collision between the bullet index at 1 and the enemy? No, there's no collision. Let's check at 2. Is there a collision between index 2? I is at 2. Is there a collision between index 2 and the enemy? Huh. There is a collision. Alright, so if there's a collision, I should remove the bullet, right? So I remove the bullet. Okay, so this is index 0. This is index 1. Index 2 was removed. This is index 3. And this is index 4. Okay, and when I remove when I go ahead and remove the list, I'm going from the front of the list. I'm going from the start of the list to the back, right? So what happens if I remove index 2? What is essentially, or what's happening? Well, when I remove index 2, okay, things have to be reordered. I remove 2, so index 3 goes to 2, right? So let's say I need to name this. I need to name these so you don't get confused. Let's call this BA. Let's call this A, B, C, D, and E, right? I remove the bullet at index 2, which is C. C is gone. So what happens? Well, D now goes here. So D takes the place of C, and E takes the place of E. And there is no more. There's no more here. Like there's no more for index 4. Index 4 doesn't exist. However, and here's the thing, right? I is currently at index 2, right? When we deleted the element, we deleted at index 2. I is at 2. So I increment. I keep going. So now I is plus plus. I moved at I number 3. I3 works fine, and then now is I3. Okay, and then I increment finally to get to the 4th index. So I is plus plus, right? Now I check. I'm like, okay, what is going on? There's like this bullets.size, right? Is telling me there are 5 elements at index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But now I'm going to element number 4, and the 5th element at index number 4. I'm going to the 4th index, but it doesn't exist. Why doesn't the 4th index exist? And you get an exception and the application crashes. And the reason the application crashes is because, again, before there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 elements. So when we looped 5 times. But since I removed an element in the middle, and D went here, and E went here, right? So this is D now, and this is E. There is no 4th element anymore. And so this bullets.size or bullets.count in C# is not updated. This variable is not updated to reflect that now there is only 4 elements, not 5, because before we had 5 elements. Now there's only 4. And so when the for loop goes to this element, it crashes, right? Because it can't find that element and the application crashes. And that is a problem. So how do we solve it? Well, to solve this issue, rather than going from the front to back, we go from the back to the front. So now when we delete an element, let me show you the example again from the back. So now if I delete that element here, I'm going this direction, right? So I check, is this colliding? No. I move on. Did this collide? No. Did this collide? Oh, yes, this did collide. So I delete this and I move on over here, right? I don't care. Even if this happened, right? I don't care because I'm at 2. To go back is -1. So I subtract I by 1. Let me try. This was a shitty explanation. Let me try this one more time. When we go from the front, I is incremented. I is at 0. I is at 0. And then increments to 1. And then increments to 2. When we reach 2, we delete this. Right? 3 goes here, and 4 goes here. Right? I is at 2. There's no more here. I is at 2. It increments to 3. Increments to 4. 4 crashes because there's no 4. That's from the front. If we go from the back, then I starts at 4. Because we're going from the back. So, hey, did you collide? No. So now I goes to 3. No, we go here. Did you collide? No. So I goes to 2. Hey, did you collide? Oh, you did collide. Okay, cool. I'm going to delete you. And then we go to 1. I is 1, and then I is 0. So it doesn't matter that we deleted an element because that is already behind us. The list can be reordered behind us, and we wouldn't care because we already moved to index 1. We already moved to index 0, right? So to solve this problem, essentially the gist of this, whenever you want to remove the element, the loop, you shouldn't go from the front of the list, because if you delete an element from the front of the list, bullet.count, which gives you how many elements in that list, will not be updated. So if there are 5 elements in my list and I delete one, it still says that there are 5 elements. And so when I go to the 5th element, the application crashes because there is no 5th element because we deleted one of the elements. However, if we go from the back, right, I go from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It doesn't matter if this was updated or not, because if I delete an element, I already went to the previous element. It doesn't matter. I already went from 2 to 1. So if I deleted something at 3, it doesn't matter that I deleted at 3. I'm already at 1 or I'm already at 2, right? So the solution, essentially the idea here, if you want to delete an element in a list or in a vector, you should go from the back. You should delete it from the back. So this loop will be rewritten in the as follow. Instead of I equal to 0, it's going to be I equal to bullets dot count minus 1. I is bigger than 0. I minus minus. Right? So now I'm going from the back, right? Bullet count minus 1, which means, let's say there's 5 elements. I is at 4, right? And I do minus 1 because I want to get the index. I want to start at index number 4. Index number 4. Is 4 bigger than 0? Yes, it is. So I execute my code and I go to 3. And then from 3 to 2. From 2 to 1. From 1, I decrement by 0. So this is less or equal, or no, it's bigger than 0. We go to 0 and then we finish our looping, right? We're looping through the entire list. And we're doing it from the back, not from the front. So that's essentially the problem in C#. It appears that this is not the problem in C#, in C++. We don't have this issue in C++. So when I erase a bullet, I'm erasing it. I just erase it, and I guess because I'm calling bullets.size, and bullet.size is a function, so it recalculates how many elements there are. So I guess it's fine. So yeah, so I can shoot and I can destroy the bullet, and that would be fine. There wouldn't be a problem. You can see it's gonna do 4 collisions because there are 4 bullets were destroyed. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so 4 collisions, 4 deletions. So I just wanted to explain because I faced that issue at one point. I don't know, like 4 years ago, and I was scratching my head. What the fuck is happening? Why is my application crashing when I delete a bullet? Right? Because we go from the front. There's no 5th index. We should go from the back, the list. But in C++, it seems fine. Anyways, so how do we delete a bullet from C++? Just we do bullets. We call the erase function. The erase function needs to start from the beginning of the list plus an offset. and the offset is which element I want to delete. So I start from 0, 0 plus 9, and I delete that. I hope that made sense. I feel like there was a little bit of a shitty explanation. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I didn't explain this in the best way possible. If I did not, please do let me know. I will explain it in another lecture. I'll have a lecture just on this, because you guys don't know, or I don't think you know how to go back in a list. So we'll just have the entire example in C#, right? And I'll show you the issue and how to solve it. But in C++, there's no problem, so I guess you don't have to worry about it. All right, so every loop iteration, I'm checking for collision between a bullet and the skeleton. If there's a collision, I'm deleting that bullet and I'm saying, hey, collision. Okay. So instead of doing that, instead of just saying collision, how about we reduce the enemy health? I think that would be nice. So let's do that. So what I'm gonna do here, well, I need health for the skeleton. So I need to create a variable called health. So I'm gonna say int health. Health is gonna have a value of 100. Okay. And what I'm gonna do, instead of collision, I'm just gonna print the skeleton health. So I'm gonna say health skeleton health is its skeleton dot health, right? So when I collide, I'm gonna reduce the skeleton health by 10 points, delete the bullet, and then print the skeleton health, right? So this is all gonna happen in the console. So, gonna shoot a bullet, skeleton health should be 90, right? Skeleton health 90. Shoot another bullet, skeleton health 80, 70, and just do that. 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0, minus 10, right? And so I have health, right? Just a health variable. So what I've done is I just made an integer called health in the skeleton class. I initialized the health variable to 100. Health is equal to 100. Every time a bullet collides with a skeleton, I subtract the skeleton health by 10. I destroy the bullet and I print the skeleton health. Okay, simple enough. All right, how about we print the skeleton health above the skeleton, right? So what we need for that, we need a text and a font, and I explained this previously, so I'm not going to go through it again. So we need those two. I'm going to put them in the skeleton itself. I'm going to mark them as private because they really don't need to be public. All right, I'm going to load the font. I'm going to load the font again. So now I'm loading the font twice. I'm loading the font here, and then I'm loading the font here. So I'm loading the font twice. That is really bad. We will have a solution for that. We should have a resource manager. We should have a class that keeps track of all the resources we're loading. So if we try to load a font twice, it will tell us, hey, you've already loaded this font. Here it is in memory. But now I'm actually the font is duplicated in memory. It exists twice, which is bad, which means this game is taking more RAM than it should. Right? But we'll solve that issue later on. For now, just whatever. Anyways, so I want to load the font again. So in the load section, so I'm loading the sprite here. Above the sprite, I want to load the font. So I'm loading the font, the Arial font, right? And I would like to render the font. I should rename this. So this is not frame rate text. This is going to be called health text, and this is just a font. I'm gonna render the health text, and then I'm gonna set the health text to that. I'm going to set the health text set string. Set string right? I'm gonna set it to health, right? The health of the what was the function? It was std to string. Yeah. So I need to set the health of the skeleton. So now the health is going to be on top of the skeleton. Oh, the health is under the frame rate because I never set the position of my text. So I need to set the position of my text. I will set the position. Where do I set the position? Okay, so I set the position over here. So I'm going to say health text dot set position to the sprite position dot get position. I need to do that every frame. I shouldn't do that once. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. In this line of code, I'm setting the skeleton sprite position to 1600 and 700. And the next line, I'm just setting the health text position in the exact same position as my sprite. I could have done it this way. I could have said this. But later on, if I want to change the, I don't know, the enemy position to this location, and I forget to change the health text location, then, I just made a bug. So essentially what I do is just I change the position of my skeleton. I change it once, and then I make the text, the position of my text, the same position as my skeleton. Now, I'm only doing this in load, which will cause a problem. If the skeleton ever moves, on the screen, then the text will not be moved. It will not move with it because I only do this once. So this line of code should really be in update. So every frame, I'm going to set the health text position to wherever my skeleton is on the screen. That's where the text is going to be. So in case later on, right now it doesn't matter, but later on, if the skeleton moves, right? You can see here's his health. If the skeleton moves later on, we basically have the text following the skeleton. So I'm gonna shoot the guy. It appears that the health is not reducing. Which is not, what the fuck? Oh, okay, so here's another problem, right? You see, I'm only setting the health text to health. I'm only doing that once, right? So I'm basically saying, hey, my health text is equal to 100. I'm only doing that once in load. And because I'm only doing it in load, it's only updating once. So I should also put this in update. So now, every single frame, this is what I'm doing. I'm updating the health text value according to my health, my player health, my enemy health, which is 100. And I'm updating the health text position to the skeleton position. So now if I shoot this guy 3 times, the health should reduce. There you go. Right? Okay. Here's a small problem though. Here's a slight issue. Every single frame, I set the health. I'm setting the health text, the actual text. I'm changing the text equal to the health every single frame. There's no need to do that every single frame. I only want to ever change the text if my health is reduced, right? I only want to ever. So look, every frame I'm saying health. Every frame I'm rendering the text 100. So every frame I say 100, draw 100, set 100, set 100, 100, 100, 100, every single frame. And I don't need to do that every frame. I only ever want to change this if the health goes down to 90. I only want to update it to 90 only once when the bullet collides with the enemy. So there's no need to do it every single frame. So I can optimize this. I can make this better. Rather than doing this every single frame, I only do it once when the bullet hits the enemy. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a function, a public function, and this function is going to be here. I'm going to say void reduce HP, right? Or I'm gonna just say set HP, set HP, or set health. Okay, which set health would take an int HP like that. So I have a function called set health, which would take HP. So I'm going to create the function, right? So what does set HP does? Well, set HP, all it's gonna do, it's gonna say health equal to HP. Okay, and it's going to set the health text to health. All right. Now, this might not make sense now, but it's fine. So now what I'm gonna do, instead of saying skeleton health minus equal to 10, I'm gonna say skeleton dot set health um hmm, um hmm. Okay, instead of saying set, I'm gonna call it change health. Change health. Change health. Okay, let's say change health. I'm gonna increment the health, so I'm gonna say health plus equal HP, and in here I'm gonna say change health. I'm gonna do -10. Okay, let me explain this line of code. Let me explain. Let me show you first what happens. Same thing should happen. Nothing should change. Well, the text is not gonna say 100 at the start. Yeah, it's not gonna say 100. But if I shoot him twice, it's gonna say 90 and then 80. All right. So, okay, let me explain this code. What I've done is I made a function called change health. This function takes an input called HP. All right. So when someone calls this function, we are incrementing our skeleton health by this variable HP. So if this variable HP is equal to 10, I am incrementing my enemy health by 10, my skeleton health by 10. If it's 20, I'm incrementing the health by 20, and so on and so forth. So whatever HP is, it's gonna increment health. Now, notice what I'm doing here. I'm saying change health by -10, which means I'm saying health plus equal to -10, which is essentially might as well saying minus equal to 10. So I'm reducing the health by 10 points. All right. What else am I doing? I'm also updating the health text to health, whatever the health value is. Now, why did I do all that? Because now I am no longer changing, I'm no longer saying, remember the code used to be like this? I am no longer setting the health text equal to the health variable every frame. I'm no longer doing that. I only do it once, right? I only call this function once a bullet collides with the skeleton. So once the bullet collides with the skeleton, we go to the skeleton, we call this function, which we call change health, which is -10. HP is -10, we're reducing the health by 10 points, and then we update the text. So we do that only when a bullet hits the skeleton. I'm not doing it every frame anymore, which saves on performance. It might not be a lot, but if you do it a lot of times, if you have a bunch of text being updated all over the game, it matters later on. So now I don't need to expose my health to be public. I can now keep it private, right? Because change HP is public, right? Okay, one more problem. The problem now, at the very beginning, right, at the very start, we're not rendering the text, right? We're not updating the text. And the reason it's not happening now is because, remember, we were doing it every frame. So on the first frame it was being updated. But now this function is only called when a bullet hits the enemy. And because there is no bullet that hits the enemy at the very start of the game, this is not being updated. So now what I can do, I just call this function, not this function. I can call this this line of code in load. So once I load my font, I just set the health text to the health. So now I only do this once in load, and I only update the text if the bullet hits the enemy, which is kind of cool, right? We're saving in performance, so you can see it's 100. If I shoot the bullets a bunch of times, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, right? And then there you go. Cool. So we got that working. Now, the question is, how do I delete my enemy? Right? How do I make him disappear? Because I killed him, he should be dead, he shouldn't be appearing on the screen anymore. How do I do that? Well, it's really easy. Just stop drawing the enemy, right? Just simple as that. How do we stop drawing the enemy? Well, just don't draw him anymore. So if I remove the code to draw the enemy, you'll see that it's not there anymore. Okay, but how can we actually dynamically stop drawing the enemy when his health is low? Well, it's easy. If health is bigger than 0, then write this code. Then execute this code. Right? So I will only draw the enemy if his health is bigger than 0. So let's try this now. Shoot him. Right? And he's gone. But notice what's happening. Even though he's not on the screen, my bullets still interact with him. My bullets are still disappearing when they hit him. Why? Well, because we're still updating him. Just because we're not drawing him doesn't mean he doesn't exist. So we need to do the same thing for update. He shouldn't exist anymore in update. Because in update we're also setting the position and we're setting the health position and so on and so forth, right? So now, if we do this, that's not going to change anything, right? The bullets are still doing that. And again, because the sprite, just because we're not drawing it, right? I mean, this is still useful. We should still keep this, right? But the bullets, I mean, my collider, this collider over here, this did collide. It's still colliding with the skeleton sprite. The skeleton sprite position is still, its location is still there, right? Even though we're not showing him. So what we can do, we have two solutions. We can say, hey, we need to check before we do the collision, right? Before we check for collision, we need to check if the skeleton health is bigger than 0. If the skeleton health is bigger than 0, then we should check for collision, right? If skeleton health is not 0, we don't check for collision. So we can solve this problem this way. The other way we can solve it is we can say just skeleton position, we should move the skeleton position out of the screen. So when he dies, his position is somewhere in off screen, which means he's not in that location anymore, right? But that's a dirty solution because that can introduce bugs later on. So imagine this is my screen and this is my enemy over here. If I kill him, then I'm basically saying, hey, move the skeleton over here, maybe outside the screen. But if my screen scrolled and if I could go to the left, right, that means that at some point my skeleton will be on screen if the camera moved and if I had the scrolling game, if my game scrolled, right, which would be a problem. So which would introduce a bug. So the best thing to say is, okay, if he dies, then we should stop checking for collision altogether. And the easiest way to do this is in here. So in here I say basically, if skeleton dot I removed health. If health is less than or equal to 0, sorry, if it's bigger than 0. If it's bigger than 0, then I should check for collision. Otherwise, I shouldn't bother checking for collision. And there's an issue here because health is private, because I made it private. So let's make it public again. right? So essentially what I'm saying, if the skeleton's alive, check for collision. And if this collision, delete the bullet. But now, if the player dies, then we don't bother checking for collision, which means our bullet will go through the skeleton. So see now? Ooh, the bullets still... Okay, so one other issue is the bullets are going to the enemy. They're going to that location on the screen, right? So we need to keep my bullets... I need to keep my bullet moving in that direction. They shouldn't stop in here, which is something we should fix, right? But at least they're not destroyed anymore. I don't know if that's a good thing, but they're not being destroyed. Okay, let's look at the bullet code. Essentially, our bullet code is saying... So I hope that made sense, first of all. Next, essentially what I'm saying here is that... what else am I doing? I'm saying that update the bullet position in the direction of the skeleton, right? Oh, one more thing that I forgot. If we pick that solution, if I pick the solution of my skeleton is outside of the screen, my bullets, look at my bullets. I'm calculating the direction of the bullet. My bullet is gonna go to the skeleton, which means the skeleton was here. Now the bullets are gonna move in this direction. They're gonna change the direction of the sun and move there because he's outside of the screen. So either way, it's a really bad solution. We shouldn't do that. All right. Okay. So now the problem is we're not showing the skeleton, and we're saying that the bullets should not be destroyed if we don't check for collision anyways if the health is below 0. One more thing we need to do is we need to change the way we're doing our code. Right now our code says we're shooting the bullet in the direction of the enemy, right? Which is not great because when they reach the enemy, they stop at the enemy, right? Yeah, it is going down. The health is going down. So rather than calculating the direction of my bullet between the player or the bullet itself and the enemy, we should calculate the direction between the bullet, where the bullet currently is, and the mouse look position. Right, so that means what I'm gonna do here is when I shoot the bullet, they shouldn't go to the enemy. They should go to where my mouse is on the screen. Right? Because we need to aim. Anyways, we gotta aim. We don't have that aim anymore. We never had that aim. So we need to fix that. So now the question, how can we get the mouse position on the screen? Well, it's pretty easy. We can do that by doing this. SF mouse get position, right? So this function here will return a vector to f, or sorry, a vector to I. It's going to return a vector to I, which means a vector with an integer values, not floats. And that's my position, my mouse position on the screen. So rather than calculating the direction between my skeleton and the bullet, it's going to be now between my mouse and the bullet itself. But there's a problem. The problem that we currently have is get position for the mouse is an integer. Get position for the bullet is vector to f, is a float. And this is a float. And you can't subtract an integer from a float, or you can't subtract two different data types. This is a vector to I. This is a vector to f. You can't do that, right? So how do you solve it? I think I can do this. I don't know if I can. Let me try. Yeah. Okay. So what I've done here, essentially, this is what I've done. I have created a new vector called vector2f. Vector2f is a class which has a constructor. One of the constructors of this class, if I go to this class, you'll see that one of the constructors of this class takes a vector. Where is it? Here. It will take a vector, a vector 2i. So basically, I can convert a vector 2i into a vector 2f. Essentially, that's what I'm doing. So this is a vector 2f, and inside this vector 2f is a get position, which returns a vector 2i. So now that should be fine. We're still gonna face issues. This is not all that is done. So now I should be able to shoot, and if I move my mouse, you can see the bullets are moving towards my mouse, but not quite. They're not accurate. You can see where my mouse is, and they stop because my mouse stopped, right? So there's a bunch of problems. First of all, my bullets are not on my mouse. My bullets are somewhere on the screen, right? Which is an issue. That's first of all. And second of all, they stop where my mouse is, which is not even the correct mouse position. So what's going on? Well, here's the issue. The first issue comes with this SF mouse get position. So the first thing we need to understand is the problem. The problem is if I shoot, my bullets are not going to where my mouse is, right? They're going in a direction that's not my mouse, right? My mouse is over here, and the bullets are going over there. Why is that happening? SF get position returns. This is what's happening. SF get position. When I say here, get mouse position, I am getting my mouse position according to the entire screen, not to the window. Meaning that, let's say this is my entire screen. This is my screen, right? And the game occupies a part of my screen. This is the game window. Right? This is the game window. This game. This is monitor. If I simply say get mouse, or if I say SF mouse get position, I am tracking the mouse position according to the monitor, meaning that 0, 0 is over here. This is 0, 0. The problem with that is my mouse position is according to the entire monitor, not according to the game itself. Which means if my mouse is over here, okay, to the game, right, this position, let's say this position over here, this position is, let's say, 1900, comma, and we drop down a little bit, let's say 100 pixels. The position, my mouse position, according to the game, is this 1900 and 100, right? But the problem is the game knows that 0, 0 is over here. Like the game knows that 0, 0 is over here, and 1900 and 100 is like, let's say it's somewhere over here. Like it's way out. It's way outside of the screen. So now my mouse or my bullets are going to a different location, right? They're not going to the correct location of where my mouse is, because again, when I say SF get mouse get position, I'm getting the position in reference to the monitor, not in reference to the game screen or in reference to the game window itself. All right, let me give you another example. Let's say my mouse is over here. Okay. Or actually, let's say my mouse is, let me move the window. Let me move the game window. The game window is over here. Okay. According to the game, 0, 0 is here. Like for my sprites, 0, 0 is over here. This is the game. Okay. And I'm saying that my mouse position currently, my mouse position is over here. Okay. My mouse position is over in the game. And in the game, if the mouse position was according to the game, not the monitor. If the mouse position was according in reference to the game, then the mouse position here would be, let's say this is 1920. This is 1920 by 1080. Let's say this is 800. Let's say this is 800. This is 600. X-axis, Y-axis. Right? So this would be around 700 pixels and maybe 50 pixels down. So this point, this is the position in reference. This is mouse position in reference to the game. But when I call SF get mouse position, it's not going to return those numbers. It's going to return the numbers according to my monitor, and my monitor is 1920 by 1080, meaning according to my monitor, this position has a position of, let's say we went down by 400 pixels and we went to the right by, I don't know, 200 pixels. So in actuality, this position over here is this, because this position is to the reference to the monitor, not to the reference of the game screen itself. Okay? And so that means if I move my mouse way outside the screen, right? If I take my mouse and I put it here, now I'm going in negative values. Sorry, not going negative values. Like if actually ignore that last part, ignore it. Right? The entire point that I'm trying to make here is that this mouse position, when I say get mouse position, it's in reference to the monitor, not the window. Right? And I would like to get my mouse position to calculate the direction correctly. My mouse position should be in reference to the game itself, not the monitor. Okay, so now the question, how can I get the mouse position in reference to the game, not the monitor? Well, I can simply provide the window over here. If I provide the window over here, right, now my mouse position, I'm basically saying, hey, give me the mouse position in reference to the game window, right? Meaning that the top left corner of the window is going to be 0, 0. Where before, if I put my mouse over here, this doesn't give me 0, 0. This gives me like, I don't know, 200 pixels and 500 pixels. This is the position of this dot, where this should be 0, 0 because, you know, it should be 0, 0. If my mouse position was in reference to the game, this will give me 0, 0. If it's not in reference to the game, it'll give me this position, which is wrong. And I want my mouse to be in reference to the window, not to the monitor. This gives me to the monitor, this gives me to the window. All right, so get position needs the window. The problem is the window right now, we don't have a window here. The window only exists in the draw function. So what I can do instead, all right, is I can do the following. There are two ways I can do this. I'm gonna pick the easy way right now, then we can pick the proper way later on. What I can do is take this line of code over here, and put it in update. So if I make a vector to I called mouse position equal to that. Okay. And so now I can pass the mouse position to the player. And so I can basically do something like this. Okay, why did I do that? This is the correct way of doing it. The reason is, if you call this function more than once, in here you might get a mouse position that is different from this function, that is different from this function for whatever reason. I don't know why SFML does that, but for mouse, you should only get the mouse position once and pass it around. You shouldn't call this function like in every update. You should just save it to a variable, get it once at the very start of your frame, and then pass it along. I don't know why SFML does that. I don't know why SFML doesn't like it, but you should pass around. You should save the mouse into a variable and pass around. Okay, So now that means update requires a mouse position. So that means in here, I need an SF vector 2F mouse position, which means in here, we need the mouse position. And I'm going to get a reference. I'm not going to get a copy. I'm going to get a reference, right? Make sure you get a reference. We don't want to copy this. So now I can just say, this is mouse position. Oh, it's just mouse position over here. And this is bullet I. What am I doing? This is just direction. Bullet direction. Right? So this is the mouse position. This needs to be fixed. So I need to do, this is vector 2F. And this is SF vector 2F. Like that. So basically, get position returns so SF mouse position get position returns a vector to I. This vector to I is in reference to the window itself, right? In relation to the window, which I'm converting to a vector to F because this is a constructor, and this constructor takes a vector to I. So I can convert the vector to I to a vector to F, save it in a variable, pass the variable to my function, and I can now calculate the direction of my mouse correctly. So now if I press play, in theory, if I shoot the bullet to my mouse, it should go to my mouse. Now it's going to my mouse. If I move my mouse, it follows my mouse, which we'll fix that later. But now, it's shooting where my mouse is. Okay. I want to show you something. This because my explanation was really shitty. Let me just do this. STDC out. I'm gonna say mouse position. STD mouse position. Okay. Dot X. Dot Y. Okay. I'm going to get my mouse position in relation to the window. So notice what happens here. Look at the mouse coordinates. 0, 0, right? Let me put some space in here. Okay. 0, 0. If I get my mouse position according to or in relation to the window, 0, 0 is top left of my screen. Right? Which means I am now calculating the location of my mouse according to the window, which is correct. That's what I want. If I shoot my bullet to where my mouse is on the window, it should shoot on the window. Where before, this position would be somewhere outside. That's why the mouse was going to a different location on the screen, right? Where before, if I don't have the window here, now the top left corner of my window is not 0, 0 anymore. You'll see that it's a different value. Which means that if I shoot my bullet, the bullet is traveling to this location. And that location will be somewhere around here. So if my mouse is over here, the bullet is gonna travel actually over here. Let me get my epic pen here. So if I don't get the location, if my mouse location is not according to the window, and let's say I shoot, if I say I would like to shoot over here, my mouse actually goes, you can see I'm shooting over here. Look at where my mouse is going. It's going here, which is wrong. This is wrong because according to everything, that this position is the position of the window. It's in the window. I don't know how to explain it any better. It's a really shit explanation. I apologize, but like my mouse is according to the monitor, and if I want to make it better, if I want to fix this, it should be according to the window because I am in window mode. This would not be an issue if my game was full screen, but it's an issue if it's in window mode. So I should always get the mouse position according to the window, not the full screen. Hope that made sense. It was a really shitty explanation. It took way too long. Apologize. But that's what I have for that. Okay, so I got my mouse position according to the window. I'm passing my mouse position to the player. Okay. Now the problem is that the mouse or the bullets are following my mouse. The bullets are currently following my mouse. Why is that happening? Well, it's happening because I'm calculating the direction every frame for every bullet. I shouldn't calculate the direction every single frame. I should only calculate it once, right? And I just let it go. So that means every bullet should have its own direction. Because every frame right now, I'm recalculating the direction. I'm recalculating the direction of all the bullets every single frame. Which means if I move my mouse, the direction obviously changes because my mouse position moved, right? So rather than doing that, I should say, hey, I shoot a bullet, you calculate the direction for that bullet once, and then we move in that direction. And that's it. We never change the direction. But every frame I am changing the direction. I change it because I update it, because I update the mouse position. Okay, so now the question. How can I just calculate the direction once for that bullet? Well, you can see that right now, all the bullets are sharing the same direction variable. And that's bad. Every bullet should have its own direction. Alright? So we gotta, in order to make this work, we gotta fix this. We gotta fix this entire code. So now it's time to actually make a bullet class. Every bullet should have its own direction. So now what's happening? I have my screen here. Okay, I'm telling my bullets to move to this location, and every frame, and this is my mouse position. Every frame, my bullets are going to this location. If I move my mouse, all my bullets are moving because they all share the same variable, which is called bullet direction. And every frame, I am updating this bullet direction because my mouse changes. What should happen instead? If I fire a bullet, okay, I tell that bullet, move to this position, or move in the direction of this position. And that's it. I do it once. And so if I change my mouse and I shoot a bullet, it should move in that direction. So now this bullet over here has this direction, but this bullet over here has this direction. So they have different directions. Every bullet has different directions. And to do that, we need the bullet class. All right, so let's do that. So I'm going to create a new class called bullet. Okay, what do we need from a bullet? What does a single bullet represents? And notice this, whenever we're creating classes, we're creating a class that represents one object, right? I have a class that represents a single bullet, no more. You shouldn't make a class to represent more than one bullet. That's not a good idea. So one class, one bullet. All right, I need to make the public. You need a bunch of variables like float, speed, float, direction. Every bullet has a speed. Every bullet has a direction. What else does a bullet need? Fire rate. A bullet needs a fire rate. Fire rate. What else do we need? We need a rectangle shape. Every bullet needs a rectangle shape. This will be private though. SF called rectangle shape, right? Single bullet. We need SFML. And we need all these functions like update, initialize, all this. We need all this. All right. We're gonna need the skeleton. We're gonna need the message. Just make it the normal, something like this. This would be public. Okay. So we have a class called bullet. It has the speed of the bullet, the direction, and the fire rate. It has the rectangle shape of the bullet and all the functions that it needs to render a bullet. And this class handles a single bullet. All right. So let's do this. Right. So let's move some of the functions, some of the stuff from the player. So I don't need, we need the fire rate timer also. Fire rate timer should be for the gun, not the bullet. This should be for the gun, not the bullet. So the fire rate part. We don't need the bullet speed anymore. We don't need the bullet speed anymore. We no longer make a, we don't need this anymore. We'll talk about this later. We don't need it anymore. What we need to do is draw a bullet. So let's draw a bullet. So I need to do window.draw rectangle shape. Okay. So I have a rectangle shape that represents my bullet, and I'm drawing that rectangle shape. What else do I need? Well, I need to calculate, I need a function to move my bullet in a certain direction. So I need to make a public function that says void move towards, or set direction, set bullet direction, or set direction, set direction. This set direction function actually no, maybe not. Hold on, how am I gonna do this? So I have the bullet, I'm drawing the bullet. I need to move the bullet. So bullet, or sorry, rectangle shape. Let's move the bullet. Rectangle shape dot set position. We need to rectangle shape get position plus direction multiplied by speed. So multiplied by delta time. Direction is not a float. What am I doing? This is an SF vector to f. Right, so I messed that up. So what I'm saying here, every frame, set the bullet position, take the bullet previous position, add to it the direction, multiply it by speed, multiply it by time, that delta time, or delta time, right? So every frame we're moving a bullet in a specific speed, in a specific direction, in a specific speed with delta time. We're doing that every frame. All right. That's update, that's draw. We don't need to load anything. We don't need to initialize anything. We need the constructor and destructor of the bullets. So let's do that. So those are all my bullets over here. Okay, initialize my bullets, my variables like speed. Speed will be initialized to 0. Fire rate, there's no fire rate. We're not doing this. You don't fire, you just There's no fire rate. You just have speed and direction. That's it. All right, so that's all we have for that. Whoops, this is the destructor. Should be in the constructor. All right, that's it. Speed is 0. Whenever we call initialize, we should initialize the... Okay, here's the thing. Whenever I... Okay, so here's the thing. Whenever I make a bullet, I am going to set the bullet speed and set the bullet direction. Right? And then move that bullet and then draw that bullet. Okay, so I have my class. My class is ready. My class represents a single bullet. I know those Visual Studio shortcuts are really good. So I have a single bullet. Now, instead of having a vector, an entire vector of rectangle shape, now I have a vector of bullets called bullets. Right, now I have a vector of bullet called bullets. Right, so now bullets. Every frame I need to do bullets dot draw, or bullets I dot draw. Right, so I'm accessing. I need to pass the window. I have a vector of bullets, right? My bullet class has initialize, load, draw, and update. So every frame, I loop through all my bullets and I access the bullet. Now, bullet has a draw function, which I call to draw the actual bullet, right? At the same time, if I click my mouse and fire rate is bigger than whatever. Now, instead of pushing a rectangle shape, I don't push a rectangle shape anymore. My rectangle shape, we just have a bullet, right? So we need to push a bullet. I push a new bullet. Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to do is to set the bullet size. So in here, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say rectangle shape dot set size to this size. So this is gonna be the size of my rectangle shape, which means the size of my bullet, right? So I push a bullet. I get the last bullet that I pushed. What I should do is I should say bullets dot initialize dot initialize. So I need to initialize my bullet. I don't need load, so I'm just gonna remove load because there's nothing to load here. I'm gonna remove load. I call initialize. I need to create a function that does this. Void. Actually, you know what? Initialize, what initialize is gonna do, it needs a few things. It needs an SF vector 2F position and an SF vector 2F direction. And I'm going to mark this direction as private. I'll explain why I mark it as private later on. But this is a new concept that I'm going to do from now on. So I'll explain it later. So I'm just gonna do this now. I'll explain all this in detail later on. So I'm setting the size. What I need to do, set the position. Okay. Set the position to position. And then set the direction. So I'm gonna say this direction equal to direction. Do I explain this now or do I explain it later? I'll explain it now since since I showed it to you. I'll explain this now. Okay. I want to take these by reference. I don't want to copy them. Remember, I don't want to copy this. Copy is expensive, or it's a waste of, you know, it's a waste. So pass by reference. I'm gonna pass these by reference, not a copy. Okay. So initialize is gonna set my bullet size. It's gonna set my bullet position and my bullet direction. Okay. Actually, I might not need to do this. I'll just do bullet. Ooh, okay. So instead of okay, so my bullet, instead of direction, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna say target. So I'm setting my bullet position, and I need to set its target. And so now I can calculate the direction once. And so I say target minus my current position. Right? I need to normalize all of that. So include math. I need to do math. Normalize vector. Okay. So let's go over this one more time. Remember, P minus C. This is my target minus my current position. That's how you calculate the direction. So I'm taking my target position, subtracting it from my current position, and that's my my direction over here. So this is target. So target over here. This is target. And I'm only calculating the direction once. And the reason I'm only doing it once is because if I calculate it more than once, then that means the bullet is gonna start following that target. If I don't want my bullet to follow a target, I should only do this once. If I want a bullet to not follow the target, I should only do this once. If I want the bullet to follow the target, I should do this every frame. I should calculate direction every frame. All right? All right. So there's that. Again, I'll go through all of this. I'll explain it again later in a bit. So now in my player, okay, initialize needs the position. The position of my bullet, where I want my bullet to start, is the sprite position. Oh, really? I can't do that? Qualifier. Oh, it has to be const. I have to do this. I do have to do this. Okay. A lot of new concepts that I have to explain. Okay. So do that target. Let's talk about target. Okay. The target is my skeleton. Right? Where's my skeleton? Oh, sorry, mass position. The target's my mass position. Okay. So I initialized my bullet. Right. I need to update my bullet. So I don't need this line of code. I don't need this line of code. I don't need this line of code. So now for every frame, I just update my bullets. Not update. In here, update needs a delta time. Delta time. Okay. In here, I need bullets dot. I need to mark this as public, as rectangle shape. Okay. Rather than doing this, we're gonna explain a lot of concepts. I'm gonna do inline SF rectangle, float rectangle, get global bounds. Hey Aniket, I am making an RPG in SFML. So get global bounds. Okay. Which returns a, it's going to be a reference global. There's so many concepts that I need to explain, guys. I will go through them, I promise. All right, rectangle, I think. So I'm just gonna return a rectangle shape dot global bounds. This is not happy because this has to be const. Okay. So now I can just do dot get global bounds. Okay. Anything else? The top, this is unhappy. Bullet speed, we need to set up the bullet speed. So initialize, we need the bullet speed. So also at the same time, position, target, I'm gonna say float speed. Now, notice for the speed, I didn't take the speed by reference. I just took the speed. Right? It's not by reference. And the reason I didn't do it by reference is because the speed is like a small variable, but vector2 is a much bigger variable. It has two floats, x, y, where speed is just a single float, so it's not worth it. Like it wouldn't make a difference if I do this, so it's unnecessary, right? So in here, I'm gonna say this speed equal to speed. There are a lot of new things that I need to explain here. I'll go through them in a second. Don't worry. So I can remove the bullet speed here, which means in here now, I need to provide my speed of 0.5f. Okay, I just want to test this. I'm gonna make sure it works. If it works, I'll go through the entire code and explain everything. Okay. So see, yeah, perfect. Okay, so you can see the bullets are going to the location of my mouse in the direction, but they're not following my mouse, right? Which is good. Okay, and you can see now the sprite is disappearing and they don't exist anymore. C++, I could use brush up to use why the speed is public. All right. The speed should not be public, should be private. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, let me go through and explain literally everything. Okay, let me explain the problem first that we had before. And can I iterate on that? Before, the issue that I had is that every frame I would make the bullet follow the mouse because every frame I was updating the bullet direction. Right? And so the bullet now is following the mouse. What should happen instead? When I shoot a bullet, I tell the bullet the direction it should move towards. And I should only do that when I fire it. And I shouldn't update that direction again. Right? Because if I update the direction, it moves, the bullet follows the mouse. Now the other problem we had, that every bullet, every single bullet had, they all shared one direction variable, right? They were all following the same direction, which is my mouse. Okay, so now what did I do? I created the class called bullet. This bullet class has the rectangle shape that basically is my bullet. It has the position, the size of my bullet, all the things that I need to draw a bullet. Every single bullet, or this class, a bullet has a direction and a bullet has a speed. My bullet has a constructor and destructor, and my bullet has an initialize function. The initialize function takes an SF reference position. So this is the starting position of my bullet. Where do I want to spawn my bullet? Or where do I want my bullet to start? And the target where I want my bullet to go to. And the speed of my bullet. Now, one thing you might have noticed that I've done is I made this a const. What's a const, first of all? Let's start with that. What is a const? Essentially a const, when you say const int, let's say pi equals 3.14. When you mark a variable as a constant, that means you will not be able to change this variable value to something else later on. So I can't do 5.0, right? And so this is an int. Let's make it a float. Right? If I mark a variable as a constant, I can only initialize its value when I create it. I'm creating the variable over here, and I'm initializing the variable to 3.14. Later on, if I try to change it, I can't. It's going to give me an error. It's going to say, I can't change it later on because my variable is marked as const. If I remove const, right, and this example wouldn't work here because this is not a class. Let me put it in here. That's the example here. Okay. If I remove the const, I can change the value of pi later on. However, if I say no, it's const, then you can get an error that says expression must be modifiable L value, which means this cannot be modified. I initialize it to 3.14, it will never have another value. So this is what const here. So this first of all, this is what const means, right? In this context, right? In the context of saying const reference position, what does this mean? Well, essentially, this is what this means. I am passing, remember, when I pass by reference, I am passing the memory address of this sprite, right? This sprite is this is the player sprite. I am passing the memory address of the player sprite, okay? So that means if I say position.x equal to 10, for example, I am changing this position here. I am changing its x value, its x variable to 10. And I'm passing by reference, which means this position is the same thing as the player, which means now I'm changing the player position from my bullet, which is not good, right? I don't want people to have the ability to change the position of my player from somewhere else. So what does const mean? Const means in this reference, in this context, const means if I say const reference a variable, I am saying, hey, if I pass this by reference, if I pass my player position by reference, I am guaranteed that I will not be able to change my player position to something else, or my player size to something else, or I'll never be able to change, well, it's the size in this case, sorry, the position in this case, right? So I'm promising here, whenever I say const, I am promising that I will not change the player position to something else. If I remove const, right, I'm allowed to do this now. And now I am changing the player position to 10, which is not good. This might introduce bugs later on, because you're like, okay, I'm passing the player position over here, and I'm okay, I'm happy, but somewhere in the code, somewhere someone is changing the position of my player because I'm passing by reference. I'm not copying the value, I'm passing the actual position of my player, and someone can change it. And so if I mark it as const, no one will be able to change the value of position, right? I'm just passing it. I'm preventing the copy, I'm preventing copying the data, but at the same time, I'm protecting myself so no one is able to change the position, or the bullet will not be able to change the position of my player. Only my player can change the position of my player, but my bullet will not be able to. So that's what const means. So I'm going to do the same thing for target. I'm going to say, hey, whoever passes the target, I'm going to pass the target by reference, which means I promise that the target, I'm not going to actually change the target values. I'm not going to change the X and Y values themselves. All right, so that's what that means. So that's const. So this initialize function needs the position, where the position of my bullet going to start, what's the target? Who am I going to shoot? Who am I moving towards? and the speed of my bullet. Delta time is just a delta time. Window, it's just window. You know all that. All right. I'll explain this in a second. All right. So what am I doing in initialize? Initialize, I'm saying this speed equal to speed. What the hell is this? This keyword always refers to the actual class, whichever class I'm in. So if I say this arrow speed, I'm saying that it's basically saying bullet. It's like I'm saying bullet arrow speed, right? It's like I'm talking to the speed in my class, right? So that this keyword means the class you're currently in. If I use this keyword in frame rate, now, like if I say this, if I do this, I don't know, font, right? That this keyword refers to the class I'm in, which means it's the frame rate, right? So that's what this keyword means. Now, so that's what that means. This arrow, this is an arrow, right? The reason I use an arrow because this is a pointer. We haven't talked about pointers yet. We'll talk about them later on. But right now, just keep it in mind. If you want to use this operator, if you want to use this keyword, you have to use an arrow. All right, what does this all means? Like, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? Well, notice this variable here is called speed, and this variable here is called speed. Right? Essentially, what I want to do, I want to pass. So this is my initialize function for my bullet, and the speed. You can see here, the speed that I'm passing is 0.5. So basically, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking this 0.5, passing it to the function initialize, which means in initialize, this variable here is 0.5, right? Now, I would like this 0.5 to be passed to this variable that's called speed. So I'm passing 0.5 to this variable, and this variable is passing it to the to the speed in the class itself, which is this. This is over here. All right, now this might look a little bit confusing, so let me change the names. If I call this m_speed, essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing this. I'm saying speed is 0.5, right? I'm saying 0.5, copy the 0.5 into this variable that's called m_speed. Why am I doing that? Well, because m_speed is in a higher scope. It's in the class, which means I can use this variable in initialize, in update, in draw. This exact variable is being used in different functions. However, speed can only be used in initialize. m_speed can be used everywhere because this variable exists in the class, and the class is the highest scope we can have. So if this belongs to the class, meaning that I can use it in initialize, update, and draw. This m_speed can be used in all of these three functions. However, this variable only belongs to initialize, which means I can only use it in initialize. So what I'm doing is this 0.5 is being sent to the initialize function and saved in speed. And I'm now taking that 0.5, moving it or copying it from speed into this variable called m_speed, which exists in the class. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can use it in update. I will not be able to use speed like that in update because speed exists only in initialize, right? I need to use mSpeed, which exists in the class. And I set mSpeed, the value of mSpeed, to speed, which is being passed in here. Where is it here? 0.5, right? So I'm taking this 0.5, making it equal to this variable speed. And then I'm taking speed, making it equal to mSpeed. And mSpeed is being used in update. So I'm just literally passing that 0.5 around. I'm passing it to different locations in my application. Okay? So The reason I had to use the this operator, the reason I did this, I said this speed, is because this variable is called speed, right? This variable here is called speed. This variable is also called speed. How can I differentiate this variable from this variable? Well, if I say this arrow speed, right, I'm referring to the variable that's called speed in my class, which is this one. So when I say arrow speed, I'm referring to the variable in my class. However, when I just type speed, I'm referring to this part. And you can see if I double click on it, it highlights this speed, right? So that's why I have to use this. If I don't use this, I'm essentially saying this speed, or speed here, equal to itself. So I'm not doing anything. I'm just saying this is equal to itself. But when I say this speed, it means that the speed variable in my class is equal to this variable over here, which which exists in the function as arguments. So that's why I need this, right? Otherwise, if this is a little bit too confusing for you, you can just name this m underscore speed. If you say m underscore speed, you'll be able to do m underscore speed. It's the same thing, right? And now you're using m underscore speed everywhere. So this is the same exact thing. Whether you did this arrow speed or you did m speed equals speed, it's the same thing, right? It's just different ways of doing things. When don't you pass ref? Also, when you don't pass by ref, yeah. So if I removed the and over here, right, that means I'm doing a copy. If I have the and, that means I'm passing by reference. I'm not doing a copy anymore. I'll cover pointers. I don't know if I'll cover it today, but I'll cover pointers. All right. So I'm taking speed, making it equal to m speed, which is in a higher scope in the class. So I'll be able to use m speed in update. That's essentially the idea, right? The other way you could have done this, by the way, this is the other way I could have done this. The other way I could have I said, hey, load speed here. So rather than doing this here, I could just have said, hey, just give me the speed over here. So now update would require the speed. But you'd have to do this every frame. You'd have to pass speed every frame. I don't want to pass speed every frame. I just want to pass it once. So that's why I decided to put it in initialize, right? Otherwise, you could have just done this, right? Just a personal solution. It's a personal choice. That's all. All right. So initialize takes my position, takes a position, right? It takes the target. Both the position and the target are being passed as a reference. They're not being copied. Both of them are const, which means if you pass by reference, whoever passes this to you, you'll not be able to change. You'll not be able to do equal to 5. Position x equal to 5. You'll not be able to do that, right? So you're protected. Whoever is going to pass the position or the target, they are protected. That you won't change their values. So because it would be really bad. Look what I'm doing. I'm passing the player and the mask position. The player is position and the mask position is target. So imagine if I say target x equal to 5. That would be really bad. Now I'm overriding the mask position, which is not good, right? Same thing for this here. So I'm passing as a const. I'm also passing the speed. So I'm saying m speed equals speed. I'm setting the size. I'm setting the bullet position at the very start. And I'm also calculating the direction of my bullet. And we've talked about this before. Essentially, I'm saying, hey, I would like my bullet to move in the target of where I want it to move. So target minus position. Remember the formula. T minus C. T is the target. C is the current position. So I would like to move to the target, and this is my position. Normalize my vector, so it's a unit 1, and that's how I calculate the direction. And I only do this in an initialize because I only want to calculate the direction initialize. I only want to do it once. If I put it in update, it will happen every single frame, which means my bullet will follow my mouse position or will follow my target. If I only want to go in the general direction of my target, you do it once. If you want to keep following it, then you do it every frame in update. Okay, what else am I doing in update? Well, in update, I'm just taking my bullet, setting its position to the previous bullet position, and incrementing it or moving it in the direction by a specific speed and by delta time, which we talked about, delta time. So that's my bullet, right? That's my entire bullet class. Now, one thing I'm doing is one concept that I want to explain is I don't want to make any of these as public. The reason I don't want to make any of these public is because if I make the rectangle shape public, someone in the code could do this. They could be like bullet dot rectangle shape dot set position, right? They could change the position of my bullet if I expose the rectangle shape. They could change the size of my bullet if I expose the rectangle shape, and I don't want to do that. I don't want anyone to be able to change the properties of my rectangle shape outside this class. All right, so this has to be private. The problem with that is with the collision detection, I need my global bounds, and the global bounds function exists inside my rectangle shape. So I have to expose rectangle shape. I need to make rectangle shape public so I can use the get global bounds function, which exists inside my rectangle shape. Okay, but at the same time, I want to keep it private. So how can we solve this? Well, what I can do is this. Forget about all this. Forget about all these. I essentially made a function. Okay, I made a function called get global bounds. This is a function that I created. I could have called it HHH if I wanted to, right? And I could have just done this, right? Bullet HHH. Doesn't matter what I call this function. It's just a function that returns a float rect. Float rect basically returns the rectangle shape global bounds. So what I've done here is I made a public function that returns the global bounds of my rectangle shape. I didn't expose this variable itself. I only exposed the global bounds. I only returned the global bounds. So this is a really nice way of making a variable private and returning part of the variable or exposing part of the variable to the public, right? So this is still private and I've only returned the global bounds. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now the second thing, I would like to return this by reference. Returning this by reference means I don't copy this every frame, right? I don't want to copy it. I want to return the reference itself, which saves on memory copy, right? And I get the actual global bounds. I get the memory address of it, which is good. The other thing that I need to do is SFML will not let you return global bounds if this is not marked as const, right? And that just basically means so you don't tamper, again, just so you don't tamper with the global bounds. You're basically promising, hey, I'm going to give you the memory address of the global bounds, but I promise that no one can change it later on. Like you can't go and change it. And that's what the const means. It's promising that someone will not be able to change this. What's next? Inline. What does inline mean? The inline keyword basically means in C++, a function, when you call a function, it has a cost in performance. It costs performance when you call a function, right? What inline means, or what inline, it hints to the compiler. It tells the compiler, hey, listen, don't make a function call, right? Instead of calling this function, just return this itself. Like literally take this and paste it here, right? Paste it like that, rather than making a function call. So inline saves or helps in performance in things like this where it's just a single line of code. The problem with inline, if it happens, is that you're copying this line of code everywhere, which means your exe, you're duplicating code essentially. If this was like 5 lines, like code, 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 and code, essentially what happens, what inline does is it copies this and it pastes it in here rather than doing a function call, rather than calling the function. And again, this is just to save on performance, and C++ is all about performance. So rather than making a function call and costing performance, we literally inline copies the contents of the function and just pastes it everywhere it needs to be used. And this is a hint, meaning that this could happen or it could not happen. Like the compiler would decide whether this is a good idea or not. So that's what inline does. It just saves on performance. And we usually use inline when I return stuff like this. So when I want to like return, when it's a single line of code and I would like to return something, I use inline to save a little bit of performance. And it's a single line of code, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna go back to get global bounds, calling this get global bounds, right? And so this what this line is. Inline saves on performance. Const promises that we are returning by reference, and that whoever we're returning by reference, we will not modify this variable, which is global bounds. It's a function, but the function returns an SF rectangle, which is a variable. So we're promising not to modify these values inside the global bounds. That's what const means. We're returning by reference, which means we're not doing a copy. We're returning the actual memory address. And this is a function that just returns this. Right? So combining all of that, we just do this all in one line of code. Cool. Right? So saves on performance, promises to not change the values of the rect float inside get global bounds, passes by reference, not a copy, a function that returns rect float, and this just returns the rect float. We're doing all of this just so I don't make this public, right? I don't want to make this public because now I'm exposing not only the global bounds, I'm exposing everything like set sprite, set position, set size, all these things. I don't want to expose them. All right, that's it. Hope that made sense, right? And there you go. Why is okay? And yes, I want to listen about pointers. Make get bounds a function. Yes, get bound is a function. Now move the function into CPP. Okay, so here's the thing. Remember when I said that code, whenever this is a function, right? Which means this is an actual code. And you can see that everywhere I only have the function head, not the implementation, except this, right? Usually, this is fine. If you have an inline function like that only returns a single line of code, you can put it in the header. It's no big deal. It's not gonna increase the compilation time by much. It's not a big deal. You could put it like you can put it in here, right? But like we usually just keep it in the header. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So for inline functions that only return one thing, this is fine. So usually you see a lot of inline functions in the header. So that's fine. All right, so that's that. So that's that for that. That's part. There you go. And in here we're doing math and whatever. I'm gonna go to the. You know what I like? By the way, the m underscore, m means the member. This is a member variable. So this variable is a member of the bullet class. So that's what the m means. M stands for member. So if we see m underscore, that means this is a member, and this is not a member because it's part of the function itself. Anyways, but here we go. We have our bullets, right? This is our bullet class. We're shooting our bullets. They move in the direction of my mouse, wherever my mouse is, and they don't change. If I shoot this guy a bunch of times, he dies. And then my mouse keep going in that direction, right? This is all fine. In the class, what I've done is just I made a list or a vector of type bullet, called it bullets, right? What I do here is when I click my mouse button, I push a new bullet to this list. I get the last bullet that I pushed. I initialize my bullet. I don't need any of this code anymore. I update my bullet. I loop through all my bullets and I update all my bullets. And in draw, I draw all my bullets, right? So now we kind of moved all the code that's related to the bullet in the bullet class. So we reduce a bunch of code in here, which is good. There you go. So that's all done. All right. Hope this made sense. I feel like I just didn't explain the mouse thing well. Like the fact that it's fine. You understand that when you put the window for the get mouse, you know that this mouse position, I'm gonna get the mouse position in reference or in relation to the window, the game window. If I remove the window, then it's gonna be in relation to the monitor, right? You know that for a fact. But the other explanation, I felt it was shitty. So if you want me to explain it again in more detail, I can explain it more in detail in the next video. So that was that. If there's any part of today that didn't make sense, please let me know. I'll explain it in the next video a little bit better, or in next stream a little bit better. But other than that, that's all we have. It's working. We're shooting an enemy. We're reducing his health. So we've done so much. This stream is 3 hours already. Jesus Christ. We've done this. We've done that. Done this. We didn't do the go out of screen part. Right? That part we did not do yet. We'll do it soon. But anyways, bullets shoots toward the mouse. If I move the mouse, don't change direction. And if I shoot this guy, he dies, and there's a fire rate. And there you go. Just kind of cool. Alright. Make the bullet come from the... we'll do that. I'll do that. The bullet coming from the center of the sprite. But not now. Because the stream has already gone long enough. It's been like 3 hours. Alright, I think I'm gonna call it here. Next stream, I'm going to destroy the bullets when they go out of the screen, make the enemy follow the player, and spawn multiple enemies. We'll do those 3 things, and then we'll start working on the game editor. Alright. I hope this made sense. Again, if you have any questions, do let me know. I'll answer it in the next stream. But yeah, there you go. Cool. Thanks guys for coming. I will talk to you guys later. Take care.